The entire kingdom attended her funeral, and that is exactly why nobody was prepared for what happened next. I am Tarek Voss, Royal Archivist of the Vale Dominion, and in all my years recording history, I have never witnessed a day that shattered reality quite like this one. The capital world of Valor Prime had fallen silent. From orbit, the city looked like a sea of silver lights stretching for hundreds of miles beneath dark clouds. Every tower displayed the same image. Princess Seraphina Vale, heir to the throne, hero of Ashera Reach, officially declared lost 3 weeks earlier during the largest battle of the decade. According to every military report, her command vessel had vanished during the final stages of the conflict. Search teams found debris. Navigation records ended abruptly. Rescue crews recovered nothing. The conclusion had seemed unavoidable. The princess was gone. By noon, nearly 1 million citizens filled the Grand Plaza surrounding the royal palace. Veterans stood shoulder to shoulder with merchants, students, workers, and families who had traveled from distant systems just to witness the ceremony. Massive holographic banners floated above the crowd. Flowers covered the ceremonial avenue. Even the sky seemed to mourn. The royal orchestra played a slow procession while the empty ceremonial coffin rested beneath a monument of white crystal. Empty because there had been no body to recover. Empty because memory was all the kingdom had left. King Aldrich Vale stood before the crowd wearing formal armor polished so brightly it reflected the lights around him. Yet nothing could hide the exhaustion on his face. He looked older than he had only a month before. Grief had a way of doing that. The plaza became completely silent when he stepped forward. Today, the king began, his voice carrying through thousands of speakers. We honor a daughter of the Dominion. Citizens lowered their heads. Some openly cried. Others stared toward the coffin as though refusing to accept reality. I remember feeling the same. History often records victories and defeats, but rarely does it capture collective heartbreak. That day, an entire civilization felt it at once. Then every alarm in the capital activated simultaneously. The sound echoed across the city. Sharp, sudden, wrong. Heads snapped upward. Guards immediately moved into position. Military officers activated communication devices. Confusion spread through the crowd. Above the plaza, a single ship emerged from the clouds. It was not a military vessel. It carried no royal insignia. Its hull was scarred and weathered, with long burn marks running across one side. The identification system struggled for several seconds before displaying a designation few citizens had ever seen in person. Human. Murmurs spread instantly. Humans rarely traveled this far into Dominion space. Even fewer arrived unannounced during a royal funeral. The ship descended slowly until it landed at the edge of the ceremonial avenue. The engines powered down. The ramp lowered, and one lone figure stepped into the light. A human male. Tall. Calm. Wearing simple travel gear. Behind him was a scorched rescue capsule attached to a transport harness. He stopped at the center of the avenue and looked directly toward the royal family. Then, in a voice that carried across the silent plaza, he spoke words that changed the fate of the kingdom forever. You buried the wrong story. Nobody seemed to understand what the human meant. For several seconds, the Grand Plaza remained completely silent. Nearly 1 million citizens stared at the stranger standing beside the scorched rescue capsule while the wind moved through the silver banners hanging above the avenue. Then the shouting began. Questions came from every direction. Royal guards rushed forward. Military officers demanded identification. Members of the High Council exchanged alarmed looks. The funeral had been transformed into something else entirely. Yet through all of it, the human remained calm. He did not raise his voice. He did not defend himself. He simply stood beside the damaged capsule as though nothing around him mattered. King Aldrich descended from the ceremonial platform. Every eye followed him. The ruler of the Dominion stopped only a few yards from the stranger. State your name, the king said. The human nodded once. Nathan Cole. His voice was steady. Independent recovery pilot. Earth. The word Earth immediately triggered another wave of whispers throughout the crowd. Humans were known across the galaxy, but rarely seen this deep within Dominion territory. Most citizens had never spoken to one. Some had never even seen one in person. Admiral Veyron stepped forward next. He was one of the most respected officers in the Dominion fleet, and judging by the look on his face, he was not impressed. You interrupted a royal ceremony, he said. You arrived without authorization, and you are standing beside what appears to be military wreckage. Explain yourself. Nathan looked at the admiral. I am here because someone deserved to come home. The answer only created more confusion. That is not an explanation, Veyron replied sharply. It is enough of one. Several members of the crowd reacted negatively. Citizens who had spent weeks mourning their princess now viewed the human as an outsider disrupting a sacred moment. Others seemed uncertain. A few looked hopeful. Hope was dangerous. Hope had already hurt them once. Minister Doran pushed through the gathering officials and pointed toward the capsule. Open it, he demanded. Nathan shook his head. Not yet. The response instantly changed the atmosphere. Suspicion spread through the plaza. Not yet. Doran repeated. You arrived during a royal funeral, carrying a mystery capsule, and refuse inspection? Nathan remained completely unfazed. The person inside deserves better than becoming a spectacle. The statement struck the crowd harder than anyone expected. Person inside. Not remains. Not cargo. Person. For the first time, genuine uncertainty appeared across the faces of the royal court. King Aldrich stared at the capsule without blinking. His grief-stricken expression had been replaced by something far more dangerous. Hope. Then a small sound came from inside the rescue pod. Soft. Mechanical. Barely audible. Yet in the silence that followed, everyone heard it. A status indicator illuminated along the capsule's side. Green. Then another. Then another. Across the display panel, a single line of text appeared. Life support active. The plaza froze. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the king looked unable to breathe. Nathan finally turned toward the capsule and rested his hand against the scorched metal. Then he looked directly at the royal family and said the words that would change everything. Before this opens, there is something you need to understand. Princess Seraphina did not disappear because of the battle. She disappeared because someone wanted her gone. The words struck the plaza harder than any alarm. Someone wanted her gone. Not lost. Not unlucky. Gone. For a moment, nobody reacted. The accusation was simply too large to process. Then the noise returned all at once. Citizens began arguing. Officials demanded evidence. Military officers exchanged worried looks. Every conversation seemed to happen simultaneously. Yet Nathan Cole stood exactly where he had been before. Calm. Patient. Unmoving. It was becoming difficult to tell whether he was brave or simply incapable of panic. Minister Doran recovered first. That is a serious accusation, he said loudly. One made without proof. Several council members immediately nodded. Indeed. This is speculation. An outsider cannot possibly understand Dominion affairs. Nathan listened without interruption. Then he looked toward the rescue capsule. I did not come here to argue. The answer irritated Doran. Convenient. No, Nathan replied. Necessary. King Aldrich raised one hand. The plaza immediately fell silent again. Explain. Nathan nodded once. 3 weeks ago, every rescue operation ended after official reports confirmed there were no survivors. He paused. Mine did not. Admiral Veyron folded his arms. Why? Because the evidence never matched the conclusion. That answer drew confused looks from several military analysts standing nearby. Nathan continued. The debris field was wrong. More confusion. The navigation logs were incomplete. Several analysts exchanged glances, and the emergency beacon stopped transmitting too cleanly. This time, some of the officers frowned. They understood exactly what he meant. Mechanical failures were messy. Catastrophes were messy. Data rarely vanished in neat patterns. Nathan looked toward the gathered officials. Someone wanted search teams to stop looking. The statement landed heavily. King Aldrich stared at the capsule. And you continued anyway. Yes. For 3 weeks. Yes. The king seemed unable to understand it. Why? The question echoed across the plaza. It was the question everyone wanted answered. Nathan considered it for a moment. Because nobody checked where the current would carry an escape pod after the battle. Several military officers immediately began whispering among themselves. We searched the combat zone. Exactly, Nathan said. I searched beyond it. A strange expression crossed the king's face. Not disbelief. Realization. Meanwhile, Minister Doran appeared increasingly uncomfortable. Enough of this, he said. Open the capsule or leave. The demand sounded confident, but there was tension underneath it. Princess Seraphina's name had not been spoken aloud for weeks. Yet now it seemed to hover over the entire plaza. Nathan glanced toward Doran briefly before returning his attention to the capsule. Very well. The crowd held its breath. Nathan reached toward the control panel mounted along the scorched exterior. Status lights illuminated one after another. Internal systems activated. Soft mechanical tones echoed from inside the chamber. Every citizen leaned forward. Every camera focused on the pod. Every official watched without blinking. Then something unexpected happened. A green indicator flashed across the display, followed by a single line of text. Occupant conscious. The entire plaza froze. Even the wind seemed to stop. And for the first time all day, fear appeared on the faces of people who should have been relieved. Nobody celebrated. That was the strangest part. The display clearly showed occupant conscious, yet relief never arrived. Instead, a heavy silence settled across the grand plaza. I watched thousands of faces searching for permission to believe what they were seeing. Some citizens looked hopeful. Others looked terrified of being disappointed again. The royal guards tightened their formation around the ceremonial platform. Advisors whispered urgently among themselves. And standing beside the rescue capsule, Nathan Cole looked as calm as a man waiting for sunrise. King Aldrich stepped closer to the pod. The distance between him and the capsule could not have been more than 10 feet. Yet it seemed impossible for him to take another step. Hope had returned too suddenly. Open it, he finally said. Nathan glanced toward the king. Before I do, there is something you need to answer. The statement caught everyone off guard. Several officials immediately objected. This is not the time. Open the capsule first. Questions can wait. Nathan ignored them. His eyes remained fixed on the king. If your daughter died in battle, why did someone transmit confirmation of her death before the search operation was finished? The plaza became silent again. Not ordinary silence. The kind that follows a question nobody wants to hear. Admiral Veyron frowned. What are you saying? Nathan pointed toward the capsule. I am saying someone knew the outcome before they should have known it. Murmurs spread through the crowd. The statement was impossible to dismiss. Every citizen understood the implication. Reports had been issued unusually quickly after the battle. Most people had accepted them because they came from trusted sources. Now those same reports felt different. Minister Doran stepped forward. Enough. His voice sounded sharper than before. You are making accusations based on assumptions. Nathan nodded slightly. Then answer the question. Doran opened his mouth, but never spoke. Around him, several members of the council suddenly appeared very interested in anything except the conversation. King Aldrich noticed. So did the crowd. For the first time all day, suspicion shifted away from the stranger and toward the people who were supposed to have answers. Nathan turned toward the capsule. When I found this pod, its emergency systems were damaged. He rested a hand on the scorched metal. But one thing survived. The crowd leaned forward. A data core. Several military officers exchanged concerned looks. Data cores preserved communications, navigation records, and emergency logs. They preserved truth. What was on it? Asked the king. Nathan met his gaze. The final transmission Princess Seraphina received before her ship vanished. Complete silence followed. Even the wind seemed to disappear. The king stared at the capsule. Admiral Veyron stared at Nathan. And several officials standing near Minister Doran looked suddenly pale beneath the glow of the holographic banners. Nathan reached toward the capsule controls. Status lights flashed green one after another. Internal systems completed their recovery cycle. Then a soft tone echoed from inside the chamber. The final lock disengaged. The hatch began to open. And for the first time since the funeral started, every person in the Dominion forgot to breathe. The hatch opened slowly. Cold vapor drifted across the platform and rolled down the steps of the ceremonial avenue. No one moved. No one spoke. The entire capital seemed trapped between hope and disbelief. Inside the capsule, medical lights cast a pale glow across the occupant. Then a figure stirred. A hand reached for the edge of the chamber. 1,000,000 people watched at once. King Aldrich took a step forward. His expression had changed completely. The ruler of the Dominion was gone. In his place stood a father afraid to hope and unable not to. The figure inside the capsule opened her eyes. Silver blue skin reflected the soft medical lighting. Long dark hair rested against her shoulders. Though visibly exhausted, there was no mistaking her identity. Princess Seraphina Vale looked directly at the crowd. For several seconds, she appeared confused by the sheer number of people staring back at her. Then her gaze found the king. "Father?" she asked quietly. The single word shattered the silence. Citizens gasped. Some cried openly. Others fell to their knees. Across the city, countless viewers watching the live broadcast reacted exactly the same way. The impossible had become real. King Aldrich looked as though he had forgotten how to breathe. "Seraphina." His voice barely carried across the platform. The princess smiled weakly. "You look tired." A nervous laugh escaped somewhere in the crowd. Then another. The tension that had gripped the kingdom for weeks finally began to crack. Yet something felt strange. While most people celebrated, Princess Seraphina was studying the platform. Her eyes moved from advisor to advisor, officer to officer, council member to council member. She was not looking at them the way someone returning home would. She was evaluating them, remembering them. Nathan Cole noticed it immediately. He stepped back and allowed the princess to take center stage. Again, he seemed entirely uninterested in attention. "How long?" the king asked. 3 weeks, Seraphina replied. "At least according to the emergency systems." Shock rippled through the audience. 3 weeks alone. 3 weeks lost beyond the battlefield. King Aldrich shook his head. "We searched for you." The princess looked toward Nathan. He did. The king followed her gaze. For the first time that day, every eye in the plaza turned toward the human. Nathan appeared uncomfortable beneath the attention. "I only followed the evidence," he said. Seraphina smiled faintly. Everyone else followed the reports. That statement landed heavily. The celebration began fading. Questions returned. Reports. Official reports. The same reports that had declared her gone. The same reports Nathan had challenged. Seraphina slowly stepped out of the capsule. Medical indicators flashed warnings across the exterior display, but she ignored them. Her attention remained fixed on the royal platform. Then she asked a question that immediately transformed relief into tension. "Where is Commander RHYSS?" Several officials exchanged glances. Admiral Veyron frowned. Minister Doran suddenly looked uncomfortable. The princess noticed both reactions. "Interesting," she said quietly. The king looked confused. "What is it?" Seraphina turned toward him. The warmth had vanished from her expression. "The last person I spoke to before my ship changed course was Commander RHYSS." Complete silence returned to the plaza. Then she looked directly at Nathan. "Please tell me you recovered the data core." Nathan nodded once. "I did." The princess closed her eyes briefly in relief. When she opened them again, she looked toward the royal court and said the words that made several powerful people visibly nervous. "Good. Then we can finally find out who wanted me to disappear." The reaction was immediate. Not from the crowd. Not from the military officers. From the royal court. The moment Princess Seraphina mentioned Commander RHYSS, several officials shifted uncomfortably. It was subtle. A glance exchanged too quickly. A nervous movement. A sudden interest in anything except the conversation taking place before them. Most citizens never noticed. Seraphina did. Nathan did too. The princess stepped forward, her posture still weakened from weeks inside the escape capsule, yet somehow she seemed stronger than anyone else standing on the platform. "Where is he?" she asked again. No one answered immediately. Admiral Veyron finally cleared his throat. "Commander RHYSS was reassigned after the battle." Seraphina narrowed her eyes. "Reassigned? Temporary border operations. Without informing me?" The admiral hesitated. That hesitation was all the crowd needed. Murmurs spread across the plaza once more. King Aldrich noticed the growing tension. "Someone explain what is happening." His voice carried the authority of a ruler who had spent enough time receiving half answers. Silence followed. Then Nathan spoke. "The answer is probably inside the data core." Every eye shifted toward him. The human reached into a storage pouch attached to his travel gear and removed a small metallic device, no larger than the palm of his hand. It looked ordinary, yet judging by the expressions around the platform, it might as well have contained the future of the Dominion. Seraphina immediately recognized it. "That is it." Nathan nodded. "Recovered from the emergency systems before the pod failed completely." The royal technicians approached carefully and accepted the device. Within moments, they connected it to a projection console positioned beside the ceremonial stage. Holographic displays illuminated above the crowd. Streams of data appeared across the sky. Navigation logs, communication records, emergency reports. Thousands of entries. The average citizen could not understand any of it. The technicians could. Their reactions became increasingly uneasy with every passing second. One analyst suddenly frowned. Another checked the same information independently. A third looked toward the king. "Your Majesty." The entire plaza became quiet. "What is it?" asked King Aldrich. The analyst swallowed. The princess received a course correction approximately 30 minutes before her vessel disappeared. Serafina folded her arms. "I know. The authorization came from Strategic Command." "I know that too." The analyst hesitated. "According to these records, Strategic Command never sent it." The words spread through the crowd like a shockwave. Citizens stared upward at the holographic displays. Military officers exchanged alarmed looks. Several council members suddenly appeared deeply uncomfortable. Serafina slowly closed her eyes. "I was afraid of that." Nathan remained silent, watching, measuring reactions, the same way he had since arriving. Then another technician spoke. "There is more." Nobody liked the sound of that. The transmission was routed through multiple internal systems before reaching the princess's flagship. King Aldrich looked toward the display. "Meaning?" The technician took a breath. "Meaning whoever sent it had high-level access inside the Dominion." Complete silence followed. The battlefield was no longer the mystery. The enemy was no longer somewhere beyond the stars. For the first time, the entire kingdom realized the danger had been much closer all along. The revelation changed everything. Moments earlier, the Dominion had been celebrating the return of its lost princess. Now an entirely different realization was spreading through the crowd. The threat had never come solely from beyond the stars. Somewhere inside the kingdom itself, someone had manipulated events from the shadows. Citizens who had arrived to mourn now stared upward at the holographic displays, searching for answers hidden inside streams of data. King Aldrich remained motionless. His eyes never left the projection. "Continue," he ordered. The technicians obeyed immediately. More information appeared above the plaza. Communication routes, authorization chains, security clearances. Every new layer seemed to deepen the mystery. Then one analyst suddenly froze. "Your Majesty." The tone of his voice instantly captured everyone's attention. "What is it now?" asked Admiral Veyron. The analyst enlarged a section of the transmission record. Several highlighted pathways appeared across the display. The false order required multiple approval signatures. Confusion spread through the audience. "Multiple," repeated the king. "Yes, Your Majesty." No single officer possessed sufficient authority to create this command alone. A low murmur rolled through the crowd. That detail mattered. It transformed suspicion into something far larger. This had not been the action of one individual acting independently. It suggested coordination, planning, preparation. Princess Serafina stared at the display. "How many approvals?" The analyst hesitated. 3. Silence followed. Nathan Cole quietly folded his arms. He had spent 3 weeks searching for the princess, yet somehow he seemed less surprised than anyone else. "Can you identify them?" asked the king. The technician checked the records again. Several seconds passed. Then his expression changed. Not directly. Disappointment swept across the platform. But the analyst quickly continued. The authorization markers were partially erased. However, the origin points remain. Every eye returned to the display. 3 locations illuminated above the capital city map. All 3 originated from within government facilities connected to the royal administration. Citizens immediately recognized them. So did the council members standing nearby. Several faces became noticeably pale. Princess Serafina noticed. Nathan noticed. And most importantly, the crowd noticed. It was remarkable how much people revealed when they believed nobody was watching. One official quietly stepped backward. Another avoided eye contact entirely. A third appeared more interested in the ground than the evidence floating overhead. Nathan finally spoke. "Interesting." The single word carried farther than expected. King Aldrich turned toward him. "What?" Nathan nodded toward the officials. "The people who know nothing are looking at the evidence." His gaze shifted toward the nervous council members. "The people who know something are looking at each other." The observation struck the plaza harder than any accusation. Suddenly, everyone began paying attention to reactions instead of records. And the reactions told a story of their own. Princess Serafina slowly stepped forward. "Play the final transmission." No one objected. No one could. The technicians immediately prepared the recovered file. Across the capital, millions of citizens held their breath. Whatever happened next would either expose the truth or bury it forever. As the playback interface activated above the plaza, I looked toward Nathan Cole. The human remained calm. Not because he knew what the recording contained, because he already knew something more important. The truth was no longer hiding inside the data. It was hiding in plain sight among the people standing closest to the throne. The final transmission began without warning. A soft tone echoed across the plaza, and then Commander RHYSS's voice emerged from the speakers suspended above the city. Instantly, millions recognized it. For years, he had been considered one of the most loyal officers in the Dominion. Hearing his voice now felt surreal. "Princess," the recording said, "updated navigation orders are attached. Strategic Command requests immediate course correction." Serafina lowered her eyes. "That is the message." The crowd listened carefully. Nothing seemed unusual at first. The instructions sounded professional. Routine. Exactly the kind of communication a military commander would receive during a campaign. Then the technicians displayed additional metadata recovered from the data core. Layers of information unfolded across the sky. Routing chains, authorization histories, hidden system records. Analysts began studying them in real time. Within seconds, their expressions changed. One technician looked stunned. Another checked the data twice before speaking. The transmission itself is genuine. Murmurs spread through the audience. However, the analyst continued, the authorization attached to it is not. The plaza erupted into whispers. King Aldrich remained focused on the display. Explain. The analyst enlarged several highlighted records. Someone inserted false credentials into the command. Package before delivery. Another technician nodded. The order appeared legitimate because it was designed to appear legitimate. Serafina crossed her arms. Meaning I followed a trap. Yes, Your Highness. Silence followed. Not because people were confused, because they finally understood. The disappearance had never been an accident. It had been engineered. Across the royal platform, several officials appeared increasingly uncomfortable. Nathan Cole watched them closely. Then he surprised everyone by asking a completely different question. How many people stopped searching after the official report was released? Admiral Veyron frowned. Every recovery team. Exactly. Nathan nodded. The moment the report became official, everyone accepted it as truth. The crowd grew quiet again. He was right. Entire fleets had stopped looking. Entire departments had moved on. The galaxy trusted official conclusions. Nathan had not. King Aldrich turned toward him. Why? Nathan seemed almost confused by the question. Because the evidence did not make sense. That was enough? Asked the king. Yes. The answer was so simple that many citizens actually laughed in disbelief. 3 weeks. 11 star systems. Endless empty space. All because one human thought something felt wrong. Serafina smiled for the first time since the transmission started. You know what the funny part is? She asked. The king looked at her. What? She glanced toward Nathan. Everyone keeps talking about conspiracies and secret plans. Her smile widened slightly. But every one of those plans failed because a stubborn human refused to stop asking questions. The crowd laughed again, this time with genuine relief. Even some military officers smiled. Yet the officials standing near the throne did not. Their anxiety remained. Nathan noticed immediately. So did Serafina. The princess studied their faces for several seconds before speaking quietly. Interesting. King Aldrich followed her gaze. What is it? Serafina's expression became serious again. The transmission explained how I disappeared. She pointed toward the nervous officials. Their reactions suggest something else. The king frowned. Such as, Serafina looked directly at them. They are not afraid of what we discovered. The plaza became silent. Nathan slowly nodded. They are afraid of what we have not discovered yet. The realization settled over the grand plaza like a shadow passing across the sun. Princess Serafina's observation changed everything. The conspiracy that sent her away had been exposed. The false orders had been exposed. The manipulated reports had been exposed. Yet several officials still looked frightened. Not relieved. Not defeated. Frightened. Nathan Cole watched them carefully before turning toward King Aldrich. Your Majesty, he said, people stop being afraid when the secret is gone. The king studied the nervous faces surrounding the throne. And if they are still afraid? Nathan answered quietly. then they believe a larger secret remains. No one argued. No one could. The crowd had been watching the same reactions for hours. Princess Serafina stepped forward and addressed the gathered citizens. 3 weeks ago, I believed my mission had failed. Her voice carried across the plaza. Then I believed my rescue was impossible. She glanced briefly toward Nathan. I was wrong about both. A ripple of laughter moved through the audience. The tension eased slightly. For the first time all day, people seemed willing to breathe again. The royal technicians continued examining the recovered records. One analyst suddenly raised his hand. Your Majesty, we found one final attachment. Silence returned immediately. What attachment? Asked Admiral Veyron. The analyst enlarged a hidden file buried deep within the transmission package. Unlike the forged navigation orders, this message had never reached its intended recipient. It had remained concealed inside the system. Forgotten. Or hidden. The file opened above the plaza. A single sentence appeared across every public screen in the Dominion. Princess must remain isolated until succession proceedings are complete. No one spoke. The meaning was obvious. This had never been about war. It had never been about foreign enemies. It had been about power. A succession dispute. A political scheme. A plan that depended on the princess never returning. King Aldrich slowly lowered his head. The disappointment in his expression was impossible to miss. Yet Princess Serafina surprised everyone. She smiled. Not because the discovery pleased her. Because the mystery was finally over. Then we know enough, she said. The crowd looked confused. Enough? Repeated the king. Serafina nodded. The details can be handled later. She turned toward the citizens filling the plaza. What matters today is not who failed. Her gaze shifted toward Nathan Cole. What matters is who refused to fail. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then the entire plaza followed her eyes toward the humans standing beside the battered rescue capsule. Nathan immediately looked uncomfortable. He seemed far more comfortable crossing star systems than standing in front of a crowd. King Aldrich noticed and smiled for the first time all day. Human, he said, who are you really? The question echoed across the capital. Nathan considered it for a moment. Then he shrugged. Just someone who does not like leaving people behind. The answer was so simple that the plaza became silent. No grand speech. No demand for recognition. No claim of heroism. Just a simple truth. Princess Serafina laughed softly. That, she said, is exactly why he found me. The crowd erupted into applause. Millions of citizens joined in. As the sound rolled across the capital world, I realized history would remember this day for the wrong reason if we were not careful. It was never the story of a lost princess returning home. It was the story of an entire kingdom accepting a conclusion while one stubborn human refused to stop looking. And from that day forward, whenever someone in the Dominion underestimated humanity, they remembered Nathan Cole. Not because he was the strongest person in the galaxy, but because he possessed something far rarer. The willingness to keep searching after everyone else had already given up.